It was still dark when the raid began. London's sky hung low. The streets silent except for the hum of unmarked vans pulling up outside a row of brick houses in Enfield. The time was 4:37 a.m. A thin layer of fog crept across the pavement, the kind of eerie calm that usually comes before chaos. Inside the lead vehicle, officers from the National Crime Agency whispered final instructions. Target is male mid-40s, possible armed. Move on my mark. A single fist went up. Then came the command, go! The door splintered with a deafening crash. Shouts filled the corridor. Police, stay where you are. Within seconds, flashlights sliced through the darkness. Papers fluttered through the air. Utility bills, envelopes, passports. Dozens of them, all with different names. And in the middle of it all stood a man in designer pajamas, blinking through the blinding torchlight, Gyunesh Ali. He didn't resist. He didn't need to, because for nearly a decade, already beaten the system, over and over again. When investigators finally tallied the numbers, the figure didn't seem real. 53.9 million pounds. That's how much money had been drained from the United Kingdom's benefit system. One man, dozens of fake identities, and hundreds of false claims. A fraud so vast, it shook the foundations of the UK's welfare system itself. But what made this case extraordinary wasn't just the money, it was the method. Because Gyunesh Ali didn't steal with guns or masks. He stole with paperwork, bureaucracy, and silence. He understood something few others did, that sometimes the easiest way to rob a system is to play by its rules. Fade to black. The backstory begins. To understand how this all started, we need to rewind to the early 2000s, when the UK's welfare system was undergoing digital transformation. The goal was noble: speed up benefits, reduce red tape, and make life easier for citizens in need. But hidden within the new technology were cracks. Cracks that someone like Gyunesh could slip through. Ali wasn't born into wealth. He came from modest beginnings, immigrating to the UK with a dream of opportunity and stability. He worked small jobs, blending quietly into the community. To most, he was just another man trying to make a living. But behind closed doors, something else was forming. He'd noticed something strange. Applications that weren't being properly cross-checked, national insurance numbers that weren't being verified fast enough, and systems that took weeks to flag duplicate claims. One night, as he filled out a routine benefits form for a friend, a thought crossed his mind. What if, he murmured to himself, this form could be copied, just changed slightly? That single thought became the seed of a £53.9 million operation. At first, it was small. A few extra claims, different addresses, slight name variations. Nothing large enough to draw attention. The system approved them. The payments went through. No one questioned a thing. Then, greed whispered. What started as hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Soon, Ali realized he could scale it. And he did. He started creating ghost identities. People who didn't exist, but still collected money every month. He rented apartments under false names. He intercepted letters, redirected posts. He opened bank accounts using stolen documents. And every claim was clean, perfect, invisible to the human eye. But no empire grows alone. Soon, others noticed his success and wanted in. That's when Gyunesh turned from fraudster to ringleader. He built a network, friends, family members, even strangers, all feeding into the same machine. They'd split the profits, launder the money, and bury the paper trail under layers of deception. Over time, the network expanded across the UK. From London to Birmingham, from Manchester to Glasgow, each city a new web of lies. But behind every scheme lies one fatal flaw: arrogance. Ali believed he was untouchable. He believed the system was too broken, too slow, too blind to ever catch him. And for a long time, he was right. Because even as investigators began to see patterns, no one imagined the scale. Until one small mistake exposed everything. A single benefits claim. A single address that appeared one too many times in the database. That's all it took. Within weeks, investigators began pulling threads. Threads that led to one of the largest fraud investigations in British history. They followed the money. They followed the names. And slowly, the picture began to form. Dozens of aliases, hundreds of accounts, millions in stolen taxpayer money. But Ali still didn't know he was being watched. By the time he realized, it was far too late. We'll go deep inside the operation itself. How one man turned government weakness into a gold mine, and how every claim was both genius and deception. He kept meticulous notes, but not on paper. His ledger lived in servers, in spreadsheets, in nights of password silence. Every fake name, every false address, every month the sum deposited into a separate account. It was orderly. It was tidy. It was criminal art. They called it the operation. It was less a gang than a machine, cogs grinding, each with a purpose. At the center sat Gyunesh Ali, calm and precise, a man who treated fraud like accounting. How did it work? First, the identities. Ali's team built faces from fragments. A birth date here, a truncated national insurance number there, a scanned passport borrowed from a forgotten folder. They used details scraped from social media, from discarded mail, from the kind of paperwork people leave in drawers. Names were stitched together until they looked real. Second, the addresses. A claim needs a residence. So they manufactured homes. Empty flats and rundown blocks were footprints on a map. Post was redirected. Phones forwarded. Utilities registered under alias names. The more mundane the address, the less suspicion it drew. A council tax bill, a driver's license, a photograph of a child. The illusion grew flesh. Third, the claims. Universal credit, child benefit, council tax support. The forms were filled out with clinical repetition. They exploited automated approvals, the very changes designed to help struggling families. When systems sped up, they missed nuance. When human review was cut back, patterns hid in plain sight. Fourth, the payment channels. Money flowed into an array of accounts. Some in the names of shell companies. Some in the names of people who had been paid a flat fee to act as front. Small withdrawals, round sums, staggered transfers. Each motion designed to mimic ordinary life. A salary here. Grocery withdrawals there. Occasionally, a cash out that looked like a one-off emergency. Fifth, the recruitment. Ali did not do this alone. He found people who were desperate, people who wanted to sell their identity for a payment that seemed harmless at first. He found those willing to lend an account, a passport, or an address. He recruited people on the margins, immigrants with shaky paperwork, the unemployed, those drowning in their own bills. He promised quick cash, a split profits, and anonymity. There were specialists in the ring, a document forger who could reproduce a birth certificate that passed a cursory glance, a postal man who could intercept a welfare letter, a cleaner who worked in a council office and knew which forms needed a second look. They were not romantic villains. They were people with skills that had been repurposed for crime. They automated what they could. Scripts ran at night, submitting claims when systems were least monitored. Bots handled the simplest forms. Humans intervened where nuance mattered. When an algorithm hesitated, a hand corrected it. They used throwaway phones, encrypted messaging apps, and burner emails that self-destructed. The ring learned bureaucracy the way a con man learns a tune. And then there was the money laundering. They bought things that would not scream suspicion. A runaround car, a second-hand van for a business. A few designer items moved through cash-only dealers. Bigger purchases were laundered through shell companies. A company providing consultancy with a bank account and a name no one questioned until later. Offshore routes were used for the largest transfers. Those funds moved through layers until the cash resembled legitimate income. From the outside, it looked like many ordinary lives. A van on the drive, a toddler's pram on a stair, a family portrait on a mantel. Inside, these symbols were the paper trail that masked billions in fraudulent claims. There were rules to their theft. Never claim too much from a single identity. Never let the pattern repeat. Avoid high-risk flags like hospital addresses or known homeless shelters. Rotate bank accounts every few months. When the system requested proof, produce a ledger, a utility bill, a fake rental agreement. Anything to keep the machine running. The scale was staggering because they applied corporate logic. Where most criminals think small, Ali thought like an operations manager. Recruit, process, review, transfer, launder, repeat. He built teams to handle volume. He hired people who could be trusted to be silent. He paid obscene sums for secrecy and paid smaller sums to keep the papers moving. And profit followed. Small sums for the runners. Bigger percentages for the middlemen. A comfortable life for the ringleader. Cars with license plates that discreetly changed hands. A house in a leafy suburb with curtains drawn against the sun. A life that outwardly resembles success, inwardly rooted in hundreds of false claims. But no system is without friction. Mistakes happen when you scale. An address reused too often, a bank account that attracted a whistleblower's suspicion, an automated red flag when multiple claims hit the same postcode. One glitch multiplied like a virus. Data teams from the Department for Work and Pensions began to notice patterns. Clusters of claims with similar anomalies, a statistical noise that wouldn't fit. Some within the ring argued for caution. Others urged expansion. Greed and hubris led to inevitable errors. Shortcuts taken to increase payout. The ring's rules eroded, and humans make mistakes born of fatigue and confidence. A courier sent a parcel to the wrong address. A cleaner raised a question about a forged form. A recruited account holder grew fearful and became careless with passwords. Small acts, but enough for the tendrils of the investigation to grip. On the morning a junior data analyst spotted an irregular cluster, no one imagined the cascade would start. He flagged it to a supervisor. The supervisor raised it again. A DWP fraud team began to cross-check. They matched bank transfers against claimants and noticed that many payments wound back to the same small set of accounts. Suspicion became strategy. Analysts worked with forensic accountants. They traced micropayments. They mapped a web. What investigators found was not an isolated fraud. It was an architecture, a network connecting seams of the welfare system across the country. Patterns that rose up like a map: London, the Midlands, the Northwest. Points of repetition, points of money, points of abuse. The authorities moved slowly at first, because bureaucracy is a giant mechanism reluctant to turn on itself. But once the machinery of investigation engaged, with DWP analysts, HMRC officers, and specialized fraud units talking in coordinate, the machine turned sharp and efficient. They set traps, shadowed accounts, and began to feed false data to see how the ring reacted. They watched who moved cash, who answered calls, who collected envelopes. By the time the first coordinated raid was planned, months of quiet work had already been done. Excavating the fraud required patience. An arrest without a case would be a hollow victory. This was not a raid for television. It was a culmination of long nights of number crunching, surveillance, and a network of civil servants and officers who believed they had uncovered something enormous. But uncovering is one thing. Bringing it down is another. And the deeper investigators dug, the more surprising connections became. Family members on the payroll, legitimate businesses unknowingly involved as fronts, and a culture of quiet compliance among those who had benefited. One of the most dangerous elements of the ring was its denial, a conviction among its members that they were cleverer than the state. That belief will be tested on a cold morning when officers moved in. What the investigators did not yet know was how close one of Ali's closest allies had come to breaking, or that a single phone call, misdirected and overheard, would shift the balance. A rainy afternoon in Leeds, 2016, a benefits officer named Carolyn Henshaw, exhausted after weeks of irregular claims, received a routine call, or so she thought. But this time, the voice on the other end wasn't just asking about payment delays. It was arguing loud, impatient. And when the caller accidentally mentioned Ali's file, Carolyn froze. A strange tension filled the line. She quietly recorded the call, a decision that would trigger the largest benefit fraud investigation in UK history. Carolyn's report made its way to HMRC's Fraud Intelligence Division. The details didn't add up. Dozens of claims under different names. Same home address repeated across forms. Bank accounts linked to people who didn't exist. The team flagged it as a pattern anomaly. But when they mapped the data, the pattern revealed something chilling. Each fake identity was connected to a single mother, real children, and real national insurance numbers stolen from actual UK citizens. By early 2017, an internal operation was quietly approved. Codenamed Operation Falcon, it brought together HMRC, DWP, and City of London Police. Their goal: to trace the mastermind behind the ghost network of fake claims that was bleeding the system dry. But they didn't expect what they found. Each fraudulent account led to property, a shell company, or a charity front, all linked to one man, Gyunesh Ali, age 39, a respected community leader who ran support services for immigrants and low-income families. To the outside world, Ali was a man of compassion. Behind closed doors, he was the architect of a £53.9 million empire built on lies. Agents began weeks of round-the-clock monitoring. Hidden cameras, financial tracking, phone taps. They uncovered footage of vans delivering stacks of documents, late at night, to Ali's warehouse. Each folder carried government forms, hundreds of them, filled with perfectly forged details. The breakthrough came when a courier was stopped for a random check. Inside his van were 4 boxes of pre-filled benefit applications with the same handwriting and one signature, GA. With enough evidence to proceed, investigators decided to act. But Ali was smart. He changed SIM cards weekly, used burner phones, and laundered money through cash transfers and crypto wallets. The operation faced delays. And just as they prepared to raid one of his offices, the money vanished. Nearly £2.7 million disappeared overnight from connected accounts. Ali had sent something, and he was ready. It was 3:14 a.m., March 17, 2018. CCTV from a quiet neighborhood in Birmingham captured a shadow slipping into a black Range Rover. That shadow was Gyunesh Ali. By dawn, he was gone. His phone's dead. His accounts emptied, and his properties transferred overnight to offshore companies in Cyprus and Dubai. Investigators were stunned. Months of surveillance, gone cold. But the one mistake Ali made was believing he could vanish completely. HMRC Cyber Division picked up the trail again, not through banks, but crypto wallets. Buried inside blockchain transactions, they noticed unusual movement of tokens linked to known laundering patterns. One transfer stood out. A £480,000 crypto payment sent to a Romanian exchange hours before Ali disappeared. That was the clue they needed. Interpol was alerted. Ali's name was added to the red notice list, placing him among the world's most wanted financial fugitives. From Birmingham to Bucharest, from London to Lagos, the chase stretched across continents. Agents traced him through flight manifests, passport scans, and customs data. But Ali had multiple identities: forged passports, fake visas, even a new name, Yusuf Demir. He slipped into Turkey, where he had old contacts in document forgery and real estate. There, he purchased a seaside villa under an alias. He thought he was safe, but the circle was closing. While in Turkey, Ali made a single encrypted call to his former associate in London, a call intercepted by UK intelligence with the help of Europol. The voice confirmed his identity. But what he didn't know was that his associate was already cooperating with the authorities in exchange for immunity. The trap was set. On July 23, 2019, Turkish and British officers launched a joint operation in Istanbul's Beylikdüzü district. Just after dawn, they stormed Ali's villa. Inside, they found £1.2 million in cash, 15 passports under different names, laptops filled with government data, and a ledger detailing every fraudulent claim filed since 2014. Ali didn't resist. He simply looked up at the officers and said, "You think I'm the only one?" That single line hinted at a deeper network, one still under investigation. After months of legal negotiation, Gyunesh Ali was extradited to UK in February 2020. Crowds of reporters gathered as his convoy arrived at Heathrow under heavy security. Behind tinted glass, Ali remained calm, silent, expressionless, as if he knew something the rest of the world did. The courtroom at Southwark Crown Court buzzed like a living hive. Camera shutters snapped, journalists whispered, and every eye focused on one man, Gyunesh Ali. Dressed sharply in a gray suit, he didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a businessman, calm, confident, maybe even proud. But as the prosecution began, the mask started to crack. "Your Honor, this is not just a case of fraud," the prosecutor declared. "This is the largest coordinated benefits scam in UK history, a machine that exploited trust, technology, and human weakness." They presented over 17,000 forged documents, 300 fake identities, and 5 years of falsified records that funneled £53.9 million in public funds into Ali's accounts and shell companies. Each detail was a nail in his coffin. Each name on the list was another victim, ordinary taxpayers who had unknowingly financed his empire. Then came the twist. One of Ali's own men took the stand, a man who had once lived in his house, driven his cars, and handled his offshore accounts. His name was Amir Sifsi, a former data clerk turned whistleblower. He described late-night operations in cramped offices, fake application templates copied across hundreds of profiles, and coded emails marked safe or ready. He even revealed how Ali had bribed 2 low-level staffers inside a local council, paying them £5,000 per week to approve claims faster. When asked why he finally turned himself in, Sifsi simply said, "Because I realized he never planned to save any of us, only himself." That sentence shifted the energy in the room. Even the jurors looked shaken. Ali's lawyers tried everything. They blamed a systemic failure within the Department of Work and Pensions. They argued that Ali was being used as a scapegoat, that he was just a middleman caught in a much larger political cover-up. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, bank transfers, property deeds, all traced back to him. The prosecution even showed footage from his Istanbul villa, revealing hidden safes behind framed artwork and encrypted drives filled with stolen data. By the end of the 3rd week, even Ali's defense team stopped objecting. On April 14, 2020, after a 4-week trial, the jury returned. The foreman stood, his voice steady. "We find defendant, Gyunesh Ali, guilty on all counts." Ali didn't flinch. No tears. No words. Just a slow exhale, as if finally released from a burden he'd been carrying for years. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison, one of the longest sentences ever given for financial fraud in the UK. The judge called it a betrayal of a nation's goodwill and a masterclass in deceit. But the story didn't end there. Following Ali's conviction, investigators uncovered a wider European network tied to fake identity syndicates in Germany, Romania, and Cyprus. Millions more were traced, though not all recovered. Several of Ali's close associates disappeared. Some presumed in hiding, others believed to be working under new names abroad. Meanwhile, the UK government launched Operation Clean Ledger, a task force dedicated to monitoring future benefit fraud using AI and blockchain tracking. Ironically, the same technology Ali once used to hide his crimes was now being used to prevent them. In prison, Ali rarely speaks. He spends most of his time reading or writing letters, never to friends, only to lawyers. He still insists there were others above him, unseen names that run the real show. Whether that's paranoia or truth, no one could be sure. But his story became a cautionary tale, not just about greed, but about the fragile trust that keeps society together. Because when one man can trick an entire system for years, it's not just a fraud, it's a mirror. According to official UK Crown Court records and reports from The Guardian, BBC News, and The Independent, the Gyunesh Ali case remains one of the largest benefit fraud schemes ever prosecuted in the United Kingdom. Investigators from the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, and the National Crime Agency, NCA, confirmed that the operation exploited loopholes in welfare verification systems using forged identities, fake housing documents, and manipulated online claims. While news reports summarize it as a digital scam, courtroom testimonies revealed something darker, a network built on fear, loyalty, and manipulation that spanned across Europe. What the newspapers didn't show were the smaller stories buried inside. Victims whose identities were stolen, and families who unknowingly received payments linked to the ring. Even parliamentary committees reviewing the case in 2021 described it as a failure not of software, but a human oversight. That chilling line, failure of human oversight, tells us that this wasn't just about one man's greed, it was about how systems built to help can be turned against the people they serve. How does this change your view of justice in the digital age? Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Gyunesh Ali acted alone, or was there a network above him that never got caught? Kindly drop message in the comments section. Subscribe for more real crime stories the media try to bury. Every week, we uncover the truth behind the courtroom headlines. Next episode, the Farzana Causers Cocaine Network, the Bradford mum who used her children, £5 million. In UK, that shocked everyone. You don't want to miss that one.